Doctors make medical diagnoses based on physical symptoms. They take our temperature, they check our breathing, even measure our brain waves. But one woman in England claims she can psychically diagnose and heal illness. And another woman in the United States has a very personal reason to believe her.
Best way I can describe it was like having a really bad toothache in your abdominal area on a daily basis.
For years, Johnny Brown, a former school teacher in Charlottesville, Virginia, suffered from Crohn's disease, a painful inflammation of the digestive tract for which there is no known cause or cure.
As we go into the next millennium, no, at the present time, Crohn's disease is not curable.
Johnny had developed abscesses in her abdomen, finger-like growths called fistula tracts.
Fistula can be painful in patients with Crohn's disease, particularly if the draining part closes off partially and there's a accumulation of the material, and at that time can be quite painful.
Surgery had no effect. Johnny had the fistulas removed, but they always grew back within a month. Now all Johnny's doctor could suggest was radical surgery, including partial removal of her intestine and a colostomy.
They would have to take out part of the vagina, rebuild it with muscle from my leg. They would have to do a complete hysterectomy. And he says the sad part, though, is that we could not promise you that that would take care of the problem. The surgeon looked at me and looked at my husband and said, if she were my wife, I would not have the surgery.
Johnny said no to the surgery. Instead, she had another plan.
I decided that I had been the good traditional patient. Now maybe alternative medicine held something for me.
Johnny began trying to boost her immune system with vitamins and herbal therapy. And when the family moved to London for business reasons, Johnny heard about someone who sounded like the answer to her prayers.
I suppose if I had to put myself in a pigeonhole, it would have to be, you know, a psychic or intuitively gifted.
Carol Everett is an ordinary housewife and mother living in the English countryside. But ever since she was a young girl, she seemed to display remarkable intuitive abilities. At first, she did psychic readings for friends. Later, she began to diagnose their health problems.
But the mind, body and soul, you see, is all connected up. And your mind...
Carol's intuitive techniques were demonstrated on a recent visit to Southern California. Asking for no information other than the patient's name and birthday, she performs a non-invasive psychic examination of his physical condition.
When I hear people say, oh, you know, I'm skeptical and, you know, I don't really know whether to believe this or not, and I think that's okay, because I had difficulty believing in myself.
Carol put her healing abilities to the test when she agreed to participate in an experiment at Tokyo's Denki University on September 8, 1994. Researchers into psychic phenomena measured the activities of the right and left hemispheres of Carol's brain as she diagnosed a young woman. Carol correctly sensed an abnormal growth in the woman's ovary.
And all the while, the left-hand side of the brain was in a deep sleep. The alpha and beta waves were on the right, coming out the top of my head. So each time I breathed in and breathed out to the top of my head, the growth was shrinking.
The researchers' official report stated, the healer diagnosed and cured this patient sitting down on a chair 1.5 meters away.
And Mike said, you know, that's my husband, he was watching the reaction, and he said when I finished, they just all stood up and clapped.
One of Johnny Brown's friends in England told her to meet with Carol. Although skeptical, Johnny agreed to make the 3-hour drive from London.
As we went into her office and sat down, her first comment was, at that point, all I want is your name and your birth date. And she starts at the top of my body and works her way down, visualizing the problems she sees with my health. And she gets to my abdomen and she says, oh my, she says, I see something there that doesn't look good.
So I visualized this, well, to me, you see, I don't know the proper words. To me, it was just like a little round thing with legs all flying all over the place. And I thought, right.
And she says, it looks like an octopus with arms. And she says, I don't know what this is. And she said, just a moment. And she turned to her medical books.
It's one of the things that I do quite often is open a book, and I seem to open it on the right page.
She flips the pages about 3 times, and she puts her finger down, and she looks at me, and she says, "Fistula tract. Have you ever heard of the term fistula tract?"
When I first looked at it, it was all red and inflamed. You know, it didn't look a very pleasant sight. And I said, look, this is what I'm going to aim to do. I can't promise, because I never do. I said, but this is what I'm going to aim to do. I'm going to aim to pop it and drain it. With that, Johnny's eyes sort of went, oh. I said, it won't hurt.
Carol gently placed her hands on my abdominal area. Everything was very calm, and the whole atmosphere of the room was one of healing.
I slow down my breathing, I slow it right down, I slow it right down, and then I lift my energies up. I bring in energies from a higher source, and I literally laser it there.
And great heat was generated. And it was as though I had a hot water bottle or a heating pad on top of my stomach.
What I see and what I feel is the energy levels coming out of my head, going into the body, and it's like all I can say when I'm looking at it, it's like a white fluffy cloud gradually getting thicker and thicker. And when you can tell that the healing is having some effect, you get like a blue translucent light. Now that doesn't always necessarily mean that that person is healed, but that means that you're having some effect.
In Johnny's case, the healing did seem to have an effect. Carol encouraged her to make follow-up visits.
And at the end of 6 weeks, the drainage problem from the fistula tracts that I had had for over 3 years dried up totally.
Almost all of Johnny's pain had disappeared. When she moved back to America, her doctor said he couldn't believe it.
And he said, "I don't know what you've been doing, but whatever it is, you keep doing it." He says, "Because this is the best you've looked in 3 years or 4. And I said, "Well, I can tell you what I've been doing." And I says, "I've been going to see a healer." And I said, "She has, as far as I'm concerned, worked miracles."
I knew I'd have some effect, but I didn't realize that it was going to be as effective as it was.
Johnny is still healthy and now has the time and energy she needs to keep up with her family. And Johnny Brown got one more gift from Carol, a lifelong friendship.
Without Carol's help, it wouldn't have happened.
I always think of myself as just an ordinary person. So I don't really sort of think, oh, I'm a healer, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm just pleased to be able to help people.
Johnny Brown's story reminds us that science still has a lot to learn, not only about specific ailments like Crohn's disease, but about the potential healing interaction between the mind and the body.